Hello, good morning to everyone. Welcome to the Europe's Rail Info Day of the call 2025-01. So it's 9:31, so I think we can start. I will just start to welcome everybody. I am Giorgio Travaini, the Executive Director of Europe's Rail. Today, I have the honor to have also with me Joachim Lukin, which is the new head of Rail Safety and Interoperability Unit in DG Move in the European Commission. And when moving to the next slide, you will see the agenda of the day. So Joachim will be doing an opening remark, followed by a presentation from my side of the call for proposal 2025-01. And then we are continuing the day in the next slide with the introduction by Judith Sander, the program manager in Europe's Rail, following flagship area 7 in particular on the single topic call that we have in this call of 2025. Then we will have a short coffee break, and we will continue with the introduction of the legal and financial guidelines that will be done by my colleagues Anna Torres, Vasilis, and Sandro as well. And after this, well, each time you will have obviously the possibility to ask questions. Questions will be only asked through the chat, so don't hesitate to use the chat function at any time asking questions, and we will reply either on the spot or on dedicated time frame. And we will end our day with also the presentation by the Research Executive Agency Central Validation Service that will explain to all of you what would be the practical step to also register your company to be able to make your application. So during the entire call itself, you will also have the possibility to ask us questions. All the questions will be anonymized and published on our website. So if you're interested, regularly follow on the website as well as on the participant portal of the European Commission. The meeting today will be recorded. You have already provided your consensus for this when you have registered to this meeting, and this recording will be also made available to all the possible interested applicants through our website. So without further ado, I will then move to the next slide and ask directly Joachim for his opening remark.
Okay, thank you, Giorgio, and good morning to everyone. It is my pleasure to welcome you to this information day for the first Europe's Rail call for proposals in 2025. I'm very happy to be in front of such a diverse and talented group of potential applicants which are gathered here today. This call represents a significant step towards fostering innovation and collaboration in the field of maglev-derived transport systems. Building on the success of the MADE for Rail project, the proposals responding to today's call will look closer into how maglev-derived transport system could help addressing the current transport challenges and enhance the performance of the rail system. Last year, 2024, was an intensive year for the joint undertaking, with joint projects between Europe's Rail and SESAR 3 in the field of traffic management, and with the Smart Networks and Services joint undertaking for the testing and operational validation of FRMCS. Further, the joint undertaking's deployment group was operationalized, and a call for associated members was launched and finalized. I expect this year to be as intense as the previous one, with the integration of the newly selected members in the governance structures of the JU, as well as in the program of Europe's Rail in more operational terms. Now, if we look a bit at the wider transport policy and the Commission's policy overall, on 12th of February, the Commission published a communication on the road to the next multi-annual financial framework. This document outlines the key policy and budgetary challenges that will shape the design of the next multi-annual financial framework and lays the groundwork for reflections on how to adapt the EU's long-term budget to evolving needs and priorities. You should be reminded that the public consultation on this document is open until 6th of May, and we would invite you to share your views with us on how you see the future financing of the Union, including the future financing in the area of research and development. The new Commission is clearly putting a renewed emphasis on the need to support the competitiveness of European businesses and industry while keeping the focus on sustainability. Both objectives call for a continued strong role of the European rail and rail supply industries. The Commission's priority to rail consists in the development of high-speed rail and the deployment of ERMTS, including a fast rollout of the new telecommunication system for rail, the Future Rail Mobile Communication System, FRMCS. And we also want to foster innovation in areas such as digital automatic coupling, but also in other forms of future innovation for rail, which will determine the sustainable future of this industry. Ladies and gentlemen, I encourage you to bring your unique perspectives, expertise, and creativity to the table. These efforts will contribute to a resilient and competitive rail sector for the future, and hence are also beneficial for society. Your enthusiasm is exactly what we need to drive innovation and make a real impact. Thank you for your interest and commitment, and we are looking forward to seeing your innovative proposals and working together to make a lasting impact. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Joachim, for your opening remarks. On my side, I can only echo what you have mentioned and also exhort all the participants to think out of the box. And this is exactly what we have this call for. Maglev technology is not a technology that is new, but is a technology that is still groundbreaking and that has the potential as well to be eventually applicable in the rail sector in a sustainable manner, but sustainable in the sense that will make rail transport even better than what it is today. So this is our aim as Europe's Rail, making sure that we set the ground for the future. And the future, you have heard from Joachim, is closer than ever, because at the moment there are also the discussion on the next multi-annual financial framework of the European Union, which obviously will also drive forward rail and its innovation, and will also determine how in Europe we can create a more sustainable transport mode. So it's on our side, it's on the political side as well, but the way how we can ensure that the policy actually support the rail system and support the innovation is by showing and delivering and being able to also demonstrate that even a brighter future is possible, and that there is technology that comes out from European Union projects like this future one. This call for proposal also follow, as Joachim mentioned, a previous call that also Europe's Rail already launched at the very beginning in 2022, related to the Maglev system. So we started with understanding with a study if there is a technological possibility and an economical feasibility and viability of the Maglev type of solution applied to the rail system. Following the positive confirmation, and all the results are publicly available also for you to look into from our website, we have decided to go towards the next step, because we're not just doing in Europe's Rail research for research, but we would like really, once we see exploratory research bringing positive value, also to increase the ladder of the innovation and go towards higher technological readiness level. And for this reason, we would like with this call to have real prototypes being tested as well at IREL 5 and 6. So I will introduce now to you a little bit the mission and the vision of Europe's Rail, so that you know the setting under which we are operating, and you can see that Europe's Rail is in business because we would like to create a fully integrated European rail network for the benefit of the citizens and the customer and the businesses. And in order to do that, we have identified a few areas of intervention that will enhance the capacity, will create rail as a more flexible system, interoperable system, so we don't want to create a bespoke solution, but European solution. Multimodal, it will address multimodality, it will be more sustainable, reliable, competitive, and obviously also looking at the inclusiveness. And we have a setup, in the next slide you can see a series of key performance indicator. These performance indicators are related to meeting the customer requirement, improve the performance, reduce cost, which is clearly something that the rail system should focus now and especially in the future if we would like to be competitive, but also looking into the resilient aspect. We have clearly climate change that is happening worldwide, and how do we address and we ensure that our rail system is resilient. This is also a key matter, but also given the geopolitical situation, we also need to look to cybersecurity and in general also security concern. How can we be resilient with this, with the increase of technology and also digitalization? And at the end, we, as I have mentioned before, we are creating a system that cannot be isolated, so it's fitting into an existing ecosystem and should become interoperable with the rest. So this is obviously a challenge when we're introducing new technologies, but we always needed to have this in mind, not to create an island of rail systems and services. And speaking about services, those needs to be smarter and cost efficient and ensure connectivity with other transport mode. We cannot bring people from A to B nor goods from A to B. So the connectivity with the other transport mode is also essential to deliver better services to customer and passenger. And then finally, our aim, and we also have a key performance indicator on this, how do we improve the competitiveness of our rail supply industry? If we move to the next slide, you can see how our integrated program is designed. We have a complete approach covering the design of the system, and this is done in the system pillar. So we're looking into the architectural element of the future system and how it will be operated in Europe. So we're trying to agree on a common way of operation. These imply also common operational requirements, and then it will also imply, following that, common standards. And we are supporting very much in the system pillar as well the creation of the single European rail area through interoperability, safety, standardization, harmonization, and stronger cooperation with the European Union Agency for Railway and obviously with the European Commission. On the innovation pillar side, the innovation pillar is where we are performing most of the research and innovation activities that is related to technical solutions. The call that we're launching today does fit into the innovation pillar, and the innovation pillar contains both flagship projects and exploratory research. So this is not a flagship project because for being a flagship project, we would like to have an even higher TRL level. Here, this call today is still under the exploratory topics, but it's part of a flagship area. So it's part of the flagship area 7 that also will be introduced later on by my colleague. And there is a need of a continuous exchange between the output of the innovation pillar and the system pillar. So there will be input-output on both sides. We need to ensure that the future system does work as one, and we're not creating actually with new innovation new issues on the system, and therefore making it also more expensive. And the last bit of our program is the deployment group. The deployment group now is officially running. You can also find on our website, if you're interested, the way how to participate, because it is an open group. It is a group that provides a recommendation to the European Union and to the sector about how do we deploy the successful output from the system pillar and the innovation pillar into the rail system, into a system that has legacy components, and how do we best migrate all of these into a common new European rail system. Deployment group also look into possible funding, financing and funding opportunities, but it is not a group that has a budget. Therefore, it's only providing recommendation for the moment being. If we move to the next slide, you can see also how you can navigate through the different documents that are at your disposal on our website. And let's say, starting from the top of the pyramid, we have the Europe's rail regulation that define the way how Europe's rail has been set up, and what are the main objectives of this joint undertaking that I have tried to summarize to you just before. We have then the master plan that define really the vision and the strategy under which we are achieving our previous objective given by the regulation. And then we have the Europe's Rail Multi-Annual Work Program, which it will be most probably the areas of interest and of focus for yourself, because in there you can see the big picture of how do we implement the different research activities through the system pillar, innovation pillar, the different flagship area and research activities. And then finally, there is the Europe's Rail Multi-Annual Work Program. So we have several. Each year we have one, or we have multi-annual ones as well. And this call for proposal does fit under the annual work program of 2025. And the call text can be found both in the annual work program and also in the participant portal of the European Commission. If we move to the next slide, this call for proposal is open to all eligible entities in accordance to the rules of Horizon Europe. You will hear more about these during the presentation today, but it's an important message to say that there are no additional conditions. So it's really an open call for proposal. So everybody has equal opportunities to be part of our activities. And then if we move to the next slide, you can see a high-level summary of what is the call about. The first point of attention I would like to make to you is that the deadline is the 7th of May 2025 at 5 p.m. Brussels time. There is no possibility of derogation. So if you submit your project proposal at 5:01 p.m., it will not be acceptable. Therefore, admissible. So therefore, it's important that you foresee a submission before 5 p.m. on the 7th of May. You can submit several times, so don't hesitate to submit a first version in maybe 1 week, 1 month even before, or even tomorrow if it is ready. And then you can resubmit a different version on top of it. The total funding from the union that we are providing is 3 million euros. It's a innovation action, so it means that it is co-funded up to 70% of the eligible cost, and public organizations can still have 100% of the funding, but overall, again, it's 70% funded. In any case, is capped at 3 million euros based on the funding that we have available. The call structure, it's defined in our work program, but largely it is divided as per every Horizon Europe call into 2 main chapters. One is the expected outcome. In the expected outcome, we are describing the expected development that an outcome that this topic should bring forward, and also we're providing the link if there are to any other topics that these future project should have. Sometimes we're using the wording action. Action is equal project, so just for you to know. And then we also have the scope. The scope section identify what are the expected capabilities, the expected enabler that should develop through research and innovation activities. It's important, we're not buying something out of the shelves. It's something that requires research and innovation. And also what is important is that you meet the expected technological readiness level. Your proposal will be evaluated by independent experts, which will use the call text, all the information that is there to evaluate, including the expected TRL level to be reached. We are expecting also to finance one project because of the budget availability. In theory, it could be more than one if we have 2 very good proposals that ask for half of the budget, for example. But usually the competition that we have seen in the past is that most of the project proposals are requiring the maximum funding that is available. And if it is the case, it will be only one project proposal financed through this topic call, if, again, we have also good project proposal. And then just to conclude, in the next slide, you can find a QR code for the questions that you may have through the research inquiry services. You can access to these let's say service that is available and at your disposal. So don't hesitate to use it. Use it also the question and answer of Europe's Rail. We will provide you the answer. And towards the end of this presentation, you will also get more information from the Research Executive Agency on how to getting started and how to register, as I have mentioned before, your organization. So now it is my honor to give the floor to my colleagues, Judith Sander, Program Manager in Europe's Rail, that she will introduce to you the Destination 7, which is the topic of this call.
Thank you very much, Giorgio. Good morning to everyone. So my name is Judith Sander, and I'm the Program Manager of the flagship area 6 and 7 in the joint undertaking. And I am pleased to present to you today the scope of the call that is linked to the flagship area 7 activities, especially related to the maglev-derived systems. And as it was already mentioned before, it's a very interesting area of research, because this is looking into innovative solutions, what we can use to make the transport system overall more sustainable. And within this area, we are not looking into developing or delivering pure maglev solutions. This is the objective of this area is to use the traditional rail network, but then applying maglev-derived solutions and for the vehicles, and making this feasible to use on the current TEN-T network or the current traditional railway network areas. So as it was already mentioned, that this call is building on a project called Made for Rail. This project was launched in 2023, and it was a very short project, but with very interesting and promising results that you can see on their website. And this poll is building up the results of the Made for Rail project. So I invite you, as it was already mentioned by Giorgio previously, to dive into the work that was carried out by the Made for Rail project. All the deliverables are available on their website, and even the ones that were originally planned, that they are sensitive, so not publicly available. The project made the most of the relevant part available for the public, in order to ensure that these proposals for this call can be submitted, and relevant results from Made for Rail is accessible to any entities. If you go to the next slide, I will present to you in short already the specific conditions of the call. It was already mentioned that the expected EU contribution is 3 million euros with the funding rate of 70%. I will not repeat what Giorgio mentioned before. The indicative project duration is 36 months, with the TRL of 5 to 6, so up to 6. So this is indeed an innovation action, and this is not linked to any actions. Why? Because as I mentioned, the Made for Rail project, which is the building block of this call, is closed. So all the results of this project can be accessible and available for the applicants, and it is not linked to any other flagship project or flagship areas. However, as it was already mentioned by Joachim as well as by Giorgio, that interoperability and making the rail system smooth and interoperable, this is one of the considerations to be also further investigated in this call. So links to the system pillar will be recommended and should be also considered by the applicants. If you go to the next slide, please, then you can see that what are the expected outcomes. So as you can see that the call is structured in 2 work streams. The first work stream is focusing on the design development, the design concept. In Made for Rail, the objective was to reach a TRL 2. Now it's increased to TRL 3, so it's still in a low TRL. However, making it more ambitious compared to the previous project, and based on the findings of the Made for Rail project, it requested to make further analysis on the signaling as well as the infrastructure components, because these are the main areas where it was assessed to be still there are critical open points to be investigated and should be further researched. Also in this work stream, we are requesting to assess the feasibility of use of the maglev-derived system on the TEN-T lines equipped with ETCS. So again, going to the signaling system. And then we are asking you to, when assessing the application on the interoperable network, to assess and see the special areas and components like the balises, the radio communication system, the odometry, and the train detection systems, in order to see how MDS can work with all these elements together. And then also in this work stream, we would request to have a special attention to the maintenance processes and how, what is the impact of the maglev-derived system when we are building the maintenance processes for the different lines, considering the installation of the linear motor. In the second work stream, it's more on the testing and the validation area. And because, as I said, to run a maglev-derived system on a traditional railway network, it's essential that it's compliant with the TSI, so the technical specification for interoperability. So this work stream shall verify how the MDS components complies with the TSI specification, so compatibility test and simulations. And based on already existing work that has been done in the Made4Rail project, they have already collected relevant standards and relevant aspects of the TSIs, which can be or may have an impact due to the MDS introduction. So further evaluation of this potential impact should be carried out in this call. Another element that beyond the technical feasibility, also further analyze the economic viability. I also would like to highlight here again, there is a typo in the call text which will be corrected, but it's not economic variability, but economic viability of the system based on the outcome of workstream 1 and for the testing. So as you can see it already on the slide, there is this correction already mentioned. And then the last objective of workstream 2 is to deliver a detailed concept architecture at TRL5 for a one-to-one scale maglev-derived system demonstrator. If we go to the next slide, I will a bit go into more details, but just highlighting the different elements that are relevant. So as I said that in workstream 1, the ambition is to have a concept design for the technical enablers and the basic technologies supporting MDS, so with TRL3, and then assess the open points, the key critical points that were identified in the Made4Rail project. These are the following: the geometric and electromagnetic compatibility of the railway infrastructure, assess the effective, max safe, tolerable speed increase in curves by adjusting the cant and the cant deficiency through levitation, assess the track infrastructure adaptation for forces added by the new propulsion systems, and assess of the track maintenance procedures to allow the use of linear motors, as I have before, and also considering what are the different maintenance regimes and what are the regulatory aspects at local level and at also at local level or at the local line. Then for workstream 2, the testing and validation. Here, so based on the results of workstream 1, testing a full functionality, performance, and safety of a maglev-derived system in a laboratory environment or up to a relevant environment. This shall be include tests related to electromagnetic compatibility test of the balise and the maglev-derived system, as well as having a test of the maglev-derived system on the area of a level crossing and switches. In addition, as I mentioned, there should be an economic feasibility done beyond the technical feasibility of the results that are coming from this test, and identifying the gaps and the potential topics for standardization on the safety and security, including impact on existing regulation, in particular on the TSIs. Based on the results of Workstream 1 and 2, propose a detailed architecture concept for a full one-to-one scale, fully automated maglev-derived system, including the detailed technical, safety, security, and performance requirements. So this is the scope, what is required for this call. And I invite you again to look at the outcome of the Made for Rail project, which are accessible because they are going to help you and drive you to build your proposal and come with a successful submission. So I am available for questions, but as Giorgio mentions as well, there is going to be a Q&A session in parallel with the open, by the call is open, and we will address all questions, clarifications if necessary, also in this Q&A areas, so we ensure full transparency and support to the applicants who would like to submit a proposal. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Judith. So we are having some question in the chat. So what I am suggesting is that we will continue to answer the question as they arrive. At the moment, we are in a little bit in advance of the coffee break. So maybe I can simply just look at the last question that we had and see if we can reply it on the spot. So the question is from Olivier. I am a little confused with the sustainability of MDS, as it will use more copper magnet than traditional electric train. These materials are going to be very critical in the near future. Yes, that's probably correct. Let's say on our side, we are not. You are for sure more expert than us for this, but in these cold topics, we're not looking indeed in the criticality of the material availability. It's about demonstrating the technology and looking at the sustainability from a point of view of rail economy. It's true that at a certain point, if the material will become very, very much more expensive, this will have an impact, but most probably a reconsideration will then have to be made. I don't know, Judith, if you would like to add something on this.
So I fully agree with you. This is not in the core competence of the core. Of course, when we are talking about sustainability, and it can be addressed, but in this specific call, we are not assessing the different materials and recyclability aspect of materials or their impact on sustainability. So this is an interesting topic to be addressed. However, this is not the core competence of the current call for the moment.
Okay, I see no further questions. So what I suggest is that we break for the coffee break, as was largely planned. We are 5 minutes in advance, but we can, in any case, come back as planned at 10:30. So it's a little bit longer coffee break of 20. There is one more question. So maybe let's keep still this one before the coffee break. So Tom wrote, I would suggest that the call is focused on the technical viability. There may well be other Horizon Europe calls that can address this wider question, regarding the role of various material for the green transition. Indeed, thank you, Tom. I think this is also what Judith mentioned. Okay, so in this case we break. We then see where we will be back at 10:30, following the Horizon Europe legal and financial guideline. And in the meantime, maybe we can continue to reply by chat to the questions. If you have questions, don't hesitate to bring them forward. Thank you very much. Oh, welcome back. It's 10:30. Now what we can do is we can start with the presentation on the legal and financial guideline, and it is my honor to give the floor to my colleague Ana Maria Torres, Grant and Legal Officer in the Europe's Trade Joint Undertaking.
Good morning, everyone. So as Giorgio said, I'm Grant and Legal Officer here in EURail, and I will give you an overview of the main rules that apply for the preparation of your applications. Next slide, please. Well, first of all, where you can find the call for proposals. First call of this year is on the funding and tenders portal as usual, and also on our website, on EURail's website, under the calls tab. Next slide, please. Very important, before submitting your proposal, you need to be aware of certain conditions. First of all, you need to obtain a participant PIC number, be registered in the participant register. And you don't need to be to have your PIC validated already before submitting your proposal, but at least you need to have obtained already your PIC number. And yourself, you need to conduct several checks when preparing your proposal in relation to exclusion, because there are some rules on exclusion that apply. You need to check that, as well as admissibility and eligibility rules that we will go into detail later on. And of course, you just need to follow the rules that are described in the call for proposals, where you find all the explanations that you need to prepare your proposal. Next slide, please. First of all, about exclusion. The EDES check is a check that we conduct ourselves in EURail, and overall before the evaluation, and of course before the award and before the grant agreement signature. So the EDES, for those who are not so familiar with it, is the Early Detection and Exclusion System. It refers, or it includes the list of persons or entities which are excluded from contracts financed by the EU budget, among others on the grounds of significant deficiencies in complying with their main contractual obligations under EU funding, fraud, corruption, or other misconduct. Applicants who are subject to any EU administrative sanctions or in certain exclusion situations cannot participate. This includes, for instance, bankruptcy situations, be in breach of social security or tax obligations, have done any grave professional misconduct, be in a fraud and corruption situation, or any other significant deficiencies in complying with the main obligations under another EU grant agreement or contract. And applicants may also be refused if they misrepresented information required for participating or failed to supply that information. If they were requested and they didn't supply that information, they also will be refused to participate in any EU funding award. Or if applicants were previously involved in our call preparation. So if you participated in the preparation of our call, of course, you are in a clear conflict of interest, and therefore you are excluded. Next slide, please. The second check to be conducted is about the admissibility. And applicants must submit their proposals, of course, before the deadline indicated on the call text, and they have to submit their proposals electronically, always electronically via the funding and tenders portal. Applications must be complete, which means that they have to include all their annexes and contain a dissemination and exploitation plan, including communication activities. And applications must correspond to the page limit, which in this case, for this call, is 120 pages, as indicated in the call text and published as on the participants portal. These are the three conditions for the admissibility of applications. Next check is eligibility. And here we have to distinguish between the eligibility to participate and the eligibility to receive funding. The eligibility to participate is broader than the eligibility to receive funding. In order to be able to receive funding, applicants must be established in an EU country, in one of the 27 member states, or in overseas territories, or entities must be established in a non-EU country, but associated to Horizon Europe. And countries which are also based in low middle income countries and in other countries when announced in the call, or exceptionally, if their participation is considered essential and as such mentioned in the call, they can also participate. And we also have some specific cases of EU bodies. Some EU bodies are also eligible for funding, and international European organizations. Some of them, for instance, the so-called international European research organizations are eligible for funding. Other international organizations, it depends on a case by case, whether it is foreseen that they are also eligible or not. Next slide, please. Associated countries. So we have the 27 EU member states, and we have the 19 associated countries to Horizon Europe. This number, of course, may vary depending on the new accessions, negotiations ongoing. At the moment, we have 19 associated countries, which are listed here. And I would highlight in particular, of course, United Kingdom, which is an eligible country since last year. And apart from, so which means that all the legal entities established in these 19 associated countries, they are eligible to participate and they are eligible to receive funding. Apart from that, we have the so-called transitional arrangements. Transitional arrangements, and at the moment we have 3, apply to those countries which are in the process of association to Horizon Europe, in a quite advanced process, let's say. So it is the case in particular for Switzerland, which country is since this year actually already eligible for 2025 budget awards. It is also the case for the Republic of Korea, so quite new because negotiations started recently. And it is also the case for Morocco. In this case, the negotiations have been, for many years, but they are still there. So these are the 3 countries which apply the transitional arrangements. In other words, entities established in these countries are eligible to receive EU funding. But bear in mind that legal entities from these countries can apply, can participate in the proposals, but only when the association agreement has been signed. Only then it will be possible to sign a grant agreement with them. So it depends. So we will have to see what is the situation at the moment of the signature of the grant agreement. Next slide, please. As I said before, the eligibility to participate is broader because non-associated third countries, so countries which are not associated at the moment, can participate as well as associated partners. Let's have a look at the definition of a legal entity, because it is also quite broad. Any legal entity, regardless of its place of establishment, established according to national law, international law, EU law, etc., is eligible. And this is independent from being eligible for funding or not. So eligible to participate as a non-third associated country, non-third party. Non-associated country, which means that they will be able to participate, but they will not receive EU funding. The exception to this rule, to this broad rule, is for the countries which are subject at the moment to EU restrictive measures. For instance, due to the current situation, political situation, so countries which are entities which are established in Russia, Belarus, or non-government controlled territories of Ukraine at the moment cannot participate in any EU funding, EU award, in any capacity. Next slide, please. What you also need when you are preparing your proposal is to have a gender equality plan. It is an eligibility criterion for certain entities, in particular for public bodies, higher education establishments, and research organizations from member states and associated countries. It is always good to have one, but for these particular entities, public bodies, higher education establishments, research organizations, it is mandatory. In the application, you will find questions, some self-assessment about it, where you will declare whether you have it or not. But bear in mind that for some of you, it will be mandatory. It is always good if you have it, but for some of you, it is a condition sine qua non. This gender equality plan must cover the publication. It has to be published on the institution's website, on your entity's website, and signed by the top management. This plan must include the dedicated resources, commitment of resources, and expertise in gender equality to implement the plan. So it has to include a description of how you are applying gender equality in your organization. It has to include data collection and monitoring. So it has to show that there is a continuous monitoring on the implementation of this plan, and sex gender disaggregated data on personnel, on staff, and annual reporting based on the indicators. And of course, if you are also organizing some training, it is also very important to include it, to refer to it, on the awareness raising training on gender equality and unconscious gender biases for staff. This is also very important to refer to the training that you are foreseeing. As I said, there is a self-declaration in your proposal that will have to be already filled in at proposal stage. And bear in mind that, as I said, if you are selected, having the gender equality plan in place will be necessary before the grant agreement signature, for some of you in particular. Next slide, please. What else do you need in order to be eligible? You need to comply with the consortium criteria, which is the following. 3 applicants, a consortium composed of 3 entities, 3 applicants, and at least one of them has to be established in a new member state, at least one of them. The 2 others can be established in a different member state or in an associated country. And of course, very important is that the 3 legal entities have to be independent between them. This is also a mandatory criterion. Next slide, please. You can participate in a funded project in many ways, in many forms. Of course, as a beneficiary or as an affiliated entity. Beneficiaries are the ones who sign the project. Normally, it is the coordinator who signs on behalf of all of them. The coordinator must be one of the beneficiaries. And beneficiaries have all the rights and obligations of the grant agreement. The affiliated entities are linked to a beneficiary, and this link can be either legal or a capital link. Both beneficiaries and affiliated entities, they do the work, and they declare all the costs. They can declare all the costs related to the implementation of the action. Other forms of participation is as an associated partner. I already said, as an associated partner, it means that you cannot get EU funding, but you do work. You do the work, and your work is described in the application. It is the case, for instance, of an entity which is established in a non-EU country, non-associated country, for instance. You can also be a subcontractor. A subcontractor works and doesn't declare the cost itself, but through the beneficiary for whom it is working. So the costs are invoiced to the beneficiary for whom they are working, and it is the beneficiary who is declaring the cost for the implementation of this action. And another possibility of participation is as a third party providing contributions. So you are for a third party providing contributions, you are giving an in-kind contribution, and the cost may be declared by the beneficiary, not necessarily, but may be declared by the beneficiary. These are the different forms of participating in a project, in a funded project. Next slide, please. The structure of a proposal. Well, here you can see new in part A, new in part B, but this is because it is compared to Horizon 2020, but it is already quite established, this new structure. So the part A deals with more administrative information. For instance, you can have there the researchers tables, which are needed to follow up the careers of the researchers. You have the role of the participating organizations, and of course the self-declared gender equality plan. So it's more the administrative part. There are some parts which were under H 2020 in part B, and now they are in part A, which is the ethics self-assessment. We will also go through it later on. It is another self-assessment about any ethics issues involved in your application, and there is also a security questionnaire. And in part B, you have the description of the action with the glossary of the terms, the consistency on the use of the terminology, which has to be ensured in all project phases, of course, and then the explanations on what exactly should be included in each section. Next slide, please. Okay, ethics review. This is what I already said, that there is a self-assessment, an initial self-assessment that you have in your you will have to fill in your application. And how does it work? The EU-funded activities must all of them comply with the international law, fundamental ethical principles and legislation, including adherence to the highest standards of research integrity, as described in the European Code of Conduct for Research Integrity. So the document of reference for you is the European Code of Conduct for Research Integrity. An ethics review process will be systematically carried out by us, by the contracting authority in first instance, based again on the self-assessment that you did yourself. You have some guidance, some useful guidance on how to fill it in on a manual, and you can find the link here. How does it go, this ethics review? So there is an independent panel of ethics experts who conduct this review and who can decide, depending on their evaluation, they can decide to establish some specific ethics requirements, for instance. If so, these requirements become part of the grant agreement as ethics deliverables. This is how they are called. These requirements could be, for instance, establishing an ethics committee or hiring an expert to monitor the implementation of an action which has some ethical sensitive issues and so on. I mean, it's not so common to have that in our sector, but it could be, because at the moment there are some, as you know, there are some issues like artificial intelligence that may raise some questions, so it could happen. Next slide, please. Another check is the security scrutiny. The security scrutiny will also be systematically done by the contracting authority, and there is also self-assessment that you need to fill in the application related to that. The focus is on whether the proposal uses or generates EU classified information, or whether there could be some potential misuse. For instance, results that could be also used for crime or terrorism, or on whether the activities involve information or materials subject to national security restrictions. So this is on a case by case. Again, depending on your self-assessment, on the information that you fill in the application, we may conduct an in-depth security check or not. Next slide, please. The evaluation of your proposals. So once you went through all the security, all the different checks that we've mentioned, your proposal will be evaluated. Will be evaluated by, again, a panel of independent experts on the basis of 3 award criteria: excellence, impact, and quality and efficiency of implementation. You can find the detail in the work program and code text. And of course, as for the rest, the general annexes of Horizon Europe Work Program 2023-25 applies, and you can also have you can also find more details in there. So these 3 criteria are excellence, which means quality of the proposal joint activities to achieve the deliverables; impact, which means the quality and credibility of the action to contribute achieving the EU Rail Master Plan objectives and the expected impact of the EU Rail Multi-Annual Work Program; and third, the quality and efficiency of the implementation, which refers to the appropriateness of the project management structure and quality of the proposed coordination. On the next slide, you have here exactly the wording that you can find on the work program. And more details, but maybe I think it's not necessary to go through each of them again. When it comes to scores and weighting, we are still in the evaluation. The scores will be awarded for each criteria. Each criterion will be scored out of 5. The threshold for individual criteria will be 3, and the overall threshold, which applies to the sum of the 3 individual scores, will be 10. As in this call, we are it's about an innovation action to determine the ranking. The scope for impact will be given a weight of 1.5. Weighting is only used for the ranking, not to determine if the proposal passed the thresholds. So weighting is only for the ranking. And the proposals that pass the individual threshold and the overall threshold, so both thresholds, will be considered for funding, of course, always within the limits of the available budget, called budget. Next slide, please. Time to grant. The information on the outcome of the evaluation, so the results of the evaluation, should normally be provided around 5 months from the deadline for submission. An indicative date for the signing of the grant agreement is around 8 months, again, from the deadline for submission. The grant agreement itself, the grant agreement that will be signed with the selected and successful proposals. How is it done? This is also done, everything's done electronically from the signature of the grant until its end, including the implementation. Everything, all the life of the grant of an action is done through or available electronically via the funding and tenders portal. The corporate structure. We have a model, corporate model grant agreement. And this is the model that we follow. And there is a specific model for the lump sum, which is what we apply in EU Rail. And pay attention in particular to Annex 5, because in Annex 5, it is more than just an annex, because it includes very important provisions, rights and obligations related to issues we just mentioned: security, ethics, values, intellectual property right, communication and dissemination obligations, open science and visibility, as well as specific rules for carrying out the action. Is this the last one?
Yeah. Thank you, Anna.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you very much. So without further ado, I will pass the floor to our head of corporate service, Vasilis, that will introduce to you all the financial elements.
Good morning and welcome to everyone. My name is Vasilis Hadjigeorgiadis, and together with my colleague Sandro Benidio, we will explain some of the key financial guidelines of the EU Rail calls for proposals based on lump sum funding. So I will start by giving you an overview of the lump sum grants on how to write a lump sum proposal, the financial aspects, and the different phases of grant management. My colleague Sandro will continue by explaining the detailed budget table and the EU-Rail's private members' contribution. At the end of our presentation, there will be a question and answer session. Should you have any questions, please raise them then. In the meantime, as mentioned earlier by my colleagues, you can also write your questions in the chat. So before we start, EU-Rail decided to use lump sum grants for two reasons. First of all, despite the simplification, actual cost grants remain complex and error-prone, and lump sum grants result in a considerable reduction of administrative burden both for the EU-Rail and the beneficiaries, since they remove all the obligations on reporting on cost incurred and the ex-post financial audits. This way, EU-Rail switches its focus from the financial management to the scientific technical content of grants. Next slide, please. In order to write a lump sum proposal, you need to use the standard Horizon Europe application form, present the objectives, methodology, the expected outcomes and impacts, as it is the case for all Horizon Europe proposals, describe in detail the activities of the work packages, provide a detailed budget table with your cost estimations. The detailed budget table is an Excel file and it must be downloaded, filled in, and submitted as an annex to the Part B of your application form. Next slide, please. In the detailed budget table, you will provide us with estimations for each cost category per beneficiary or per affiliate entity if applicable and per work package. The estimation should be an approximation of your actual costs, which are subject to the same eligibility rules as in the actual cost grants, must be in line with your usual practices, must be reasonable, must be necessary for the implementation of the proposed activities. These estimations are used to generate in the detailed budget table the breakdown of lump sum shares per beneficiary and per work package. Please note that should the detailed budget table includes ineligible cost, this will be reduced. Next slide, please. Yes. The proposal can contain as many work packages as needed. A work package is a major subdivision of the work plan of your project. A single activity or a task, a percentage of progress, or a lapse in time cannot be considered as a work package. So work packages with long duration can be split along the reporting periods, so as not to be paid only at the end of the project. Next slide, please. As it was mentioned earlier by Anna, and moving on to the financial aspects, in accordance with the Horizon Europe Grant Agreement, a legal entity can participate in a project as a coordinator, beneficiary, affiliate entity, associated partner without receiving any funding, and subcontractor. It is important to have clarity in your proposal on who does what, how, and when. Next slide, please. Yes. The different types of costs are the same ones as the ones used on actual cost grants of Horizon Europe. There are 4 direct cost categories and 1 indirect cost category. The direct costs are personnel costs, which represent the time worked by the project, the time worked to the project by different categories of employees. The subcontracting costs, where a beneficiary subcontracts parts of its activities to another entity in accordance with the description of the action. Purchase costs, which represent travel and subsistence, equipment, and other goods, works, and services. Other cost categories, such as financial support to third parties and the internal invoices, if applicable. And the indirect costs, which are a flat rate of 25% of the direct costs, excluding subcontracting. Next slide, please. So, the personnel costs are calculated on the basis of a new corporate formula, which is the day equivalents worked on the project multiplied by the daily rate. This new formula is a simplification. It is applicable across all EU programs. It provides for a single calculation per person and per reporting period. It is based on the maximum declarable daily equivalents per year, which is a pro rata of 215 days. Next slide, please. So the daily rate is calculated by dividing the personnel cost per reporting period by the maximum declarable day equivalents. The personnel costs include fixed salary, social security contributions, taxes, other payments linked to remuneration, and the personnel costs should not include arbitrary bonuses or payments of dividends. Moving on to the next slide. Yes, regarding subcontracting, so the principles of subcontracting of actual cost grants are applicable to the lump sum grants. However, they're not considered as an eligibility condition. Those principles are best value for money, absence of conflicts of interest, and the subcontraction should be only for a limited part of the action. The estimated cost of subcontracting must be described in Annex 1, displayed in the Annex 2, and in the detailed budget table. And then the purchase cost concern travel and subsistence costs, where travel, accommodation, and subsistence are included. Equipment costs, where by default it includes the depreciation costs. Other goods, works, and services, where supplies and consumables are included. All these expenses must be necessary for the implementation of the project and must ensure the best value for money and the absence of conflict of interest. Now, as it is the case for all Horizon Europe proposals, your proposal will be evaluated by external experts against the standard evaluation criteria of excellence, impact, and implementation. The cost estimations will be assessed under the implementation criteria, where the external experts will check that these estimations are reasonable and not excessive and allow for the completion of the activities described in the proposal. Please note that if the experts consider that there has been an overestimation of cost, this might lead to a reduction of the maximum grant amount and recorded at the evaluation summary report. Moreover, over or under cost estimation will impact the scoring of the implementation criteria. Next slide, please. After the evaluation phase, and should your proposal is retained for funding, the grant preparation phase will start, which is a standard process to prepare the grant agreement for lump sum grants. The non-negotiation principle is applicable. However, there might be small changes to correct inconsistencies or obvious errors and address any adjustments to the lump sum in accordance with the evaluation summary report. The breakdown of lump sum shares per beneficiary and per work package is included in the grant agreement as the Annex 2. As you can see in the table, the budget allocation is done per work package and per beneficiary, and the share of lump sum per beneficiary equals to the maximum grant amount. Please note that you can use the budget as you see fit as long as the project is implemented as described in the Annex 1, while budget transfer between work packages or beneficiaries might trigger the need for an amendment. The lump sum grants have the same payments as the actual cost grants. The pre-financing payment, where the payment is done to the coordinator who distributed to the beneficiaries, minus the 10% retention for the mutual insurance mechanism. The interim payments upon completion of work packages per reporting period, and the payment of the balance, which closes the financial aspects of the grant, releases the 10% of retention for the mutual insurance mechanism, and allows for the partial payment of incomplete work packages. During the interim and the payment of the balance, the coordinator must use the standard reporting template where work packages are declared as complete or not complete. An incomplete work package during a reporting period can be completed and paid in the subsequent period. However, only at the final reporting period it is possible to declare a partial completion work package and enter the percentage of completion. Please note that the completion of the work package is not based on a successful outcome, but on the completion of activities as mentioned in the Annex 1, the description of the action. Continuing with the acceptance of the work packages, please note that the work packages are accepted if activities are carried out as described in the Annex 1. A work package declared complete can be accepted or rejected. In case of rejection, you will be invited to respond to the observations of EURail. If the rejection is upheld, you can complete the work package in the next reporting period. You always have the possibility to amend the project according to the technical needs, or any deviations during the reporting can be justified. If at the end of the project you cannot complete the work package, the lump sum that concerns this work package will be paid partially in line with the accepted percentage of completion. Of course, during the implementation of the project, you will be able to amend your grant using the same procedure and under the same conditions for all Horizon Europe grants. Most frequent cases of amendment concern change of the Annex 1, which is the description of the action, change of duration or the duration of the reporting periods, adding or removing beneficiaries, affiliated entities, associated partners, and subcontractors, transfer of activities between beneficiaries, transfer of lump sum shares between the beneficiaries. Please note that work packages that have been already completed and paid cannot be amended further. As mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, ex-post financial audits are not applicable in lump sum grants. However, ex-post technical reviews organized by EURail will take place based on a sampling methodology. The purpose of such review is to ensure the proper implementation of the project from scientific technical perspective and ensure compliance with non-financial obligations of the grant agreement like IPR, ethics, open science, and dissemination. Regarding the records to keep, the consortium must keep the technical documents, publications, prototypes, and deliverables, documentation required by good research practices, any document that proves that the work has been done as described in the Annex 1. The following documentation should be kept by the consortium to comply with obligations outside the grant agreement, such as national law or internal procedures. However, it will not be required by EURail. This documentation are timesheets, payslip or contracts, depreciation policies, invoices, any document proving that the actual cost have incurred. I have now reached the end of my presentation, and I give the floor to my colleague Sandro. Thank you very much for your attendance.
Hello everyone, my name is Sandro Benidio, and I'll be presenting you a few details about the budget table that you'll need to include with your proposal. This table consists of an Excel file that can be downloaded directly in the call page, and once filled in, it should contain all the relevant financial information from the proposal. In the first tab of the table, can you please go back to the last slide? In the first tab of the table are all the instructions of how to fill it in. Each proposal must submit one fully filled detailed budget table in an Excel file. Each tab of the file presents a different set of information, and I advise you to read the instructions tab attentively before initiating encoding the table. Next slide. After reading instructions, you should start by encoding the information in the beneficiaries list. Here, you should add all the beneficiaries and affiliated entities and choose their respective funding rate. This is an open field. You can put the amount that you want. Once completed, you should click on the button Apply Changes, and the table will now include a tab for each beneficiary together with their respective affiliated entities. Next slide. After filling in the beneficiaries tab, the next step should be to fill in the work packages list. In this tab, you should add all the work packages defined for the project and their descriptions. Once completed, click on the button Apply Changes, and the table will now be ready to complete with the financial information from all the beneficiaries and all their affiliated entities. Next slide. So now that the table is ready, each beneficiary should complete one individual sheet. This individual sheet includes one separate section for each work package and for each affiliated entity. For each work package in which the beneficiary participates, you should enter the cost estimations under each cost category used. Important that only the yellow cells can be filled, all the rest is blocked with formulas. The total cost per category are calculated automatically at the end of the sheet, and you can find the summary with the information concerning all work packages and the total cost foreseen for each beneficiary or affiliated entity. Next slide. Referring to the affiliated entities, if a beneficiary has an affiliated entity, the columns for the entity are generated automatically in the beneficiary sheet. You should enter the cost estimation for the affiliated entity in the same way as for the main beneficiary. Next slide. On the direct personnel costs, you should enter the total number of items and the average cost per item for each category of personnel costs. Remember that one item equals 1 person month. It's important also to refer that personnel costs will be evaluated by the experts using the Horizon dashboard for lump sum evaluations and the EURail internal average personnel cost overview. If your personnel costs are higher than the values in the benchmarks, you must justify them in the Any Comments tab. Next slide. There is one line for subcontracting per beneficiary and per work package. Here you should enter the number of subcontracted tasks for a given beneficiary and a given work package as number of items. The tasks to be subcontracted and their costs must be described and justified also in the table 3.1 in part B of the application form. The costs entered in part B must match exactly the costs and the costs given in the Excel file. Next slide. On direct purchase costs, you should enter the total number of items and the average cost per item for each relevant category. If purchase costs exceed 15% of the personal costs of a given beneficiary, this beneficiary should also complete a table 3.1 of part B of the proposal template. Next slide. The Excel file has a table to help you calculate depreciation. In this tab, you have a tool where you can calculate the depreciation costs of any equipment to be used in the action. This will help you define the amounts to be added in the individual beneficiary sheets concerning depreciation. This amount is not automatically transferred to the respective beneficiary tab. You have to add it manually, the depreciation costs, in the dedicated section of the beneficiary tab. Next slide. Certain types of costs can be entered only if they're explicitly allowed in the specific conditions of your topic. Indirect costs and total costs are calculated automatically based on the information supplied in the cost categories of the individual sheets. Next slide. After completing the information in the individual beneficiary tabs, there's a tab summary per work package that will give you an estimation of costs for all beneficiaries for each work package. In this tab, after completing the individual sheets, you will find the summary of all the work packages in the project, and these summary tables will be used by the evaluators during the evaluation of your proposal. Next slide. The table beneficiary work package person months will give you the number of person months each beneficiary plans to allocate to each work package. In this tab, after completing the individual sheets, you'll find also a summary of the effort allocated to the whole project with a breakdown per work package and beneficiary. Next slide. As with the other summary tabs, the breakdown of the lump sum per work package and per beneficiary is generated automatically on the basis of the individual costs estimation of each beneficiary. It displays the lump sum shares per beneficiary and affiliated entity and per work package. It applies the funding rate that you have chosen in the beneficiary list. And in the part A of the application, you will have to fill in the budget for proposal table, entering the requested grant amount for each participant. To do so, please use the total amount per beneficiary in the table estimated breakdown of the lump sum that was generated in the Excel file. So the tables must match. So once completed, the next slide, please. Once you complete the detailed budget table, upload it in the online submission system as annex to the Part B template. The format of the Excel template is uses macros. While you work on it, always save it as a macro file, so the macros keep working. You should, however, upload the Excel file in a normal Excel format, because for security reasons, we cannot allow you to upload the file with the macros. Always, it is important also, always keep a copy of the original macro file in case we request you. Next slide. So now we are going to briefly talk about the members' contribution. Next slide. In Annex 1, Part B concerns the estimated members' contribution. This is only for EURail members. The members should fill in a dedicated table to account for their contributions on ICOP and IK. These contributions should have a leverage effect of 1.263, meaning that for each euro of EU funding, the member should contribute with 1.263 euros of in-kind contribution. Any discrepancy to these ratios shall be well and duly justified. Next slide. So here's an overview of the members table. As previously stated, the total eligible costs correspond to the formula 1 euro co-funding plus 1.263 euros of in-kind contributions. This 2.263 ratio is the baseline for all EURail grants open to members. The table is quite simple and should consolidate all the information for all members participating in a project. In the first column, the members should be listed. In the second, it should contain all the information concerning the requested EU contribution. And in the third column, we must have the amount of the total contributions on top of the funding. The fourth column is a formula that calculates the ratio of the contribution, and the final column will serve to add any comments or justifications to deviations in the ratios. Next slide. During the grant agreement preparation phase, the tab JU contribution should be filled in with the ICOP and IK for the members participating in the project. Filling in this information is mandatory, and the figures encoded should be in line with the figures declared in the table estimated members' contribution that were shown previously. Next slide. There is one lump sum dedicated page in the funding attendance portal. In it, you'll find a trove of elements pertaining to the lump sum processes. In this page, you can find very instructive videos, tutorials, and guidance documents. If you're interested in the subject, we strongly advise you to consult it. Many thanks to all for listening. This was my last slide. I will now give the floor back to Giorgio.
Yes, thank you, Sandro. So just to answer the only question that remain on the chat, yes, the recording will be available. It will be available on our website, so you will be able to watch it. Also, as I have mentioned, if you still have a question after this info day, you will always have the possibility to write us in the email that I have shared in a comment before, but also that is available on our website, and then all the question and answer will be published for the benefit of everyone. So I don't see, also the slides will be available, so you don't need to make any screenshot, and including the links, yes. Hyperlinks, yes, correct. Okay, so I don't see any further question, meaning that we catch up the time, and that's good. And yes, here it's the info call if you would have any other question. And what I would suggest is if our colleagues from the REA services are online, to directly give the floor to them for explaining to you how to get started.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Maria Domenica Cugnidoro from the Central Validation Service that is in the REA, the EU Research Executive Agency. Today, I'm going to explain you, I'm going to show you how to register your organization in the participant register, and how to, what's next with the validation overview, with the validation of your organization. Please note that the registration of your organization in the participant register is necessary for your project participation. And so that's why it's important to pay attention to this presentation and the tips that I will give you. So first of all, I would like to let's discover the importance of the Central Validation Service for your project participation. Then, no, sorry, don't, yeah, please, please slide. Then we will see how to register your organization in the participant register. Then we will see what's next with the legal validation of your organization and the LEAR, that is the legal entity appointed representative. And then we will see how the communication is carried out. And in the end, I will give you the links to some guidance documents. Next slide, please. So the Central Validation Service, why it's relevant for your project participation. This is because in our service, we verify the legal existence and the legal statuses of your entities. We validate the appointment of the legal entity appointed representative, the LEAR. We validate the legal changes of every registered entity. We assess the mergers, the potential merger, and we execute the universal takeovers. And we also deal with many other tasks which are linked to the correct registration of every organization in the system. Please go on. So the validation process is it's a process made of 4 stations, let's say. We have first the registration, which is done by you at the proposal stage. Then we have the validation of the legal data that you register during the registration. Then we have the LIR, and then in the end, if necessary, there is the financial capacity assessment. And throughout the validation process, all the communication is done exclusively via the participant register. There is no Outlook or other channel of communication. It's just via the participant register. Next slide, please. So we have the registration of the organization. It's important to repeat that any organization that wants to participate in a call in this context has to be registered in the participant register and obtain the participant identification code, which is a PIC number, the PIC code. It's a 9-digit number. Next slide, please. So where do we start? We start at the proposal stage in the funding and tenders portal. We will go to the participant register page. You see here there is a print screen of the funding and tenders portal in the participant register page. Next slide, please. The first step is to find whether or not my organization is already registered, so has already or not the PIC code. And where do we find it? There is a search engine here in a white square. You see, find the registered organization. I check whether my organization is registered. If it is registered, I have to use the registration data and the PIC number of the registered organization. If not, I'm going a bit lower of the page and I see the blue button where it's written register your organization. When I click there, I start a workflow of several steps. Please, next slide. You see, I will be asked to include some data of my organization. So which deal with the identification, for example, the legal name or VAT number, organization data, legal information. And then also I have to register the authorized user, which is myself as a self-registrant, and also other people that can be my backup in case I'm not available. And then after these several steps that can take more or less 5 to 7 minutes, then the registration is completed. And the new PIC, the new participant identification code, is given to you in a declared status. It means that you self-declared some specific information that at a later stage from the Central Validation Service, we will request you to give the support of a certain legal document. Next slide, please. So the second station is the verification of the legal data. And this is done by the Central Validation Service based upon legal supporting document. Next slide, please. So the validation of legal data is done before the signature of the first grant agreement or contract. And then it's done only once. So when a PIC is valid, an organization has been validated, it stays valid and can be reused for future participation in EU grant, procurement actions, and contribution agreement. What we do with the help of you, of the entities, is to maintain the correct data in the system. And it's important to underline the fact that the validation is always performed based on supporting documents. And this is in accordance with in accordance with the EU financial regulation and the validation rules. You have the hyperlink here in the slide. Next slide, please. So this is an example of the legal validation documents that we request when we assess a specific dossier, a specific PIC. We ask the legal entity form, which is a template available in the participant register, and then we request some certain recent documents, like, for example, the VAT extract or a registration extract, and so on. It depends on the legal entity. We request specific documents. Next slide, please. Then we have the LIER, because after the validation of the entity is requested to nominate a LIER. Who is a LIER? The LIER is the legal entity appointed representative, and it's a person that is appointed by the legal representative of the organization to be the contact person of the organization. And the LIER keeps an overview on the proposals, on the projects, on the contracts in which the organization is involved in. For example, the legal representative of an entity can be for a private company in Germany. It could be the managing director, and this person, the managing director, has to appoint a LIER, the legal entity appointed representative, to be the main contact person for the PIC. Next slide, please. So the roles and duties of the LIER. The LIER, as I said, is the main contact person, notify the EU of changes in legal data and legal status, submits legal and financial documents if required, manages access rights of person in the organization, and nominates backups, which are called the account administrators, because in case the LIER is not available, is on holiday or leaves the entity, there is always another person or other persons, which are the account administrators, that can continue the communication with the Commission services. So the LIER can also nominate other individuals which are authorized to sign grants, agreements, and contracts and their amendment and financial statements. Next slide, please. Yeah, this is the list of the LIER appointment documents that we request. We have the LIER appointment letter that is available in the participant register in the page of your PIC. Then we ask the official proof of identity for both the legal representative and the LIER. So, you know, the legal representative that appoints the LIER has to be also checked by our services. And the proof of empowerment of the legal representative. That, for example, in case of the private entity in Germany, I said that it must be an official extract from the commercial register, for example. Next slide, please. The communication. As I said, the communication is exclusively managed through the participant register. There is no other way of communication. And when we, from our service, we contact the participant, there is a message of notification that the self-registered, in case of non-valid PIC, or the LIER, in case of valid PIC, receives in case we need, we send a message. So this is the notification that you see here in this print screen. Next slide, please. But problems can happen. What happens in case you lose access to a PIC? We have underlined two scenarios. In case of declared PIC, so in case of non-valid PIC, if for example, the self-registrant left the organization and no one has access because the self-registrant didn't appoint a backup, in that case, the PIC cannot be reused and a new PIC needs to be created. And at this, in this scenario, the validation service has to be informed because we need to link the non-valid PIC to the PIC we are working on. Okay. So, and in case of so this was in case of non-valid PIC. In case of valid PIC, For example, if the LIR is not available anymore and there are no account administrators as a backup, a new LIR needs to be appointed, but the PIC can be kept. So in order for the LIR and the new LIR to be appointed, there is the LIR recovery procedure, and this is accessible through the participant register. And you have here in this page the link to the LIR recovery procedure. And here you will be able to upload all the LIR documents. Next slide, please. And this is just a page with the links to some important guidance documents, for example, the rules of validation, and also the instructions how to register your organization in the participant register, online manual, and the legal notice on the funding and tenders portal. So this is the last page. If you have any question, I'm available for replying to you. Thank you for your attention.
Very much, Maria Domenica. Here,
Yeah.
I see one question actually that was asked in the chat, and I read it out. Please advise the basis of a PIC for a single person as a participant, with a PIC, of course.
I am not sure I understood the question, in fact. Advise a single person?
So if I understand correctly, the question, it's about if a person as a participant can have a PIC.
A natural person,
yes.
Yes, a natural person as an individual person, yes, can have a PIC. Yeah. We can.
And the registration, it's the same.
It's the same, yes, it's the same.
Okay. I don't see any other calls. Any other questions? So thank you very much for this.
You're welcome.
And we have reached the end of our info day. I have already replied to a few questions in the chat. This call is indeed only on one topic, but I would like to reassure all the participants, because there are many of you, that there will be further opportunities on Europe's Rail calls. So we are actually planning to launch a call still this year, towards the end of this year, that will cover the other flagship areas of our program. So from flagship area 1 to flagship area 6, but it will also cover other exploratory research activities towards the end of this year. So if you are interested in other topics than the maglev derived system, I really suggest that you follow up our website. We will announce the call very soon. You can already have a glimpse about the future call if you read our program, because in reality we already have the draft topic text in the work program itself, but this will be further refined, and we will have an amendment of this work program in June this year. So this work program will also be published with also a new set of research and innovation topic that will be launched towards the end of this year. And then we will also be doing an info day dedicated to the new call. But concerning this call, as I have mentioned, is about the maglev derived system. So I wish you a successful application, a good networking with all interested parties that would like to build up a consortia to answer to this call, and looking forward also to working with you. There is one last question that I see. Does any part of the fund call focus on superconducting magnet integration? No, not specifically, but I also suggest that you can look into the call text if you see specific elements. Also, Tom shared the Cluster 5 topic from the European Commission on the Horizon Europe call. And in general, all the rules for participation that we have shown to you in the Europe's Rail Call are largely valid also for the other calls of the European Commission in Horizon Europe, because are all based on the rules of Horizon Europe. So you can also search in the funding and tender portal for any other call that may be of your interest, and follow also the steps there to apply. So thank you again for your time, and looking forward to receive your good proposal. Thanks a lot.